Jesse, thanks so much for joining me and for welcoming us to your beautiful home. Your two wonderful dogs might make a cameo during this interview as well. Just set the scene for me. Where are we?
We are in Tuscany in Italy. The area that we live in it's in the province of Lucca, so it's kind of on the western side near the beach. So we're near Viareggio. In the distance, on a clear day, you can see the Leaning Tower of Pisa from here. So, you know, we're kind of situated on the west coast of Italy and the west coast of Toscana and in the middle of the countryside. So it's pretty nice here.
So the short answer is we're in paradise.
Yeah, we think of it that way, you know, and there's a few people that whenever they come to visit us, that's how they describe it, that's for sure.
I'm a dog lover and we're going to see them throughout this interview, hopefully, fingers crossed, but you've got two beautiful pugs as well.
Yeah, and they're in Italian, it's Carlini. That's what pugs are called. So that's what we have. Yeah, two Carlini, due Carlini.
So you got this place during the pandemic, and I understand it was originally an Airbnb.
Yeah, we bought it from a Swiss woman who had, it's a 700-year-old villa, and she converted it about 12, 13 years ago into a bed and breakfast. And then after running it for 10 years, I think she just kind of got a little bit tired of all the work, and so then she decided to sell it, and we bought it and kind of made it our family home. And like you said, it's been paradise since then.
You've got a pool, you're renovating different parts of it. Is this just a way of you winding down before you start your day job?
Well, I'm already thinking about retirement. But the way it works right now with Coaching Canada, I'm able to kind of do both and kind of manage. You know, I wake up at 7 here. I get to work because we have a bunch of olive trees too. And so I have a big garden, and then I'm in the garden until like noon, 1 o'clock, and then people in North America start waking up, or people in Europe start finishing their training sessions. And so then I start having conversations and going through what needs to be done and all the preparation to make sure that our national team's ready to go.
So one day you might be producing wine?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. Let's see. It's a little, olive oil is a little hardier. Olives are hardier than grapes. But I think that I'll probably dip my toes into making some grapes at some point here. But look, it's just really nice to be here. It's really relaxing. People in the neighborhood are great. We're learning Italian. We're acclimating ourselves to the entire community here. And my wife got Italian citizenship, so it's been a really nice sort of change of pace for us with the kind of lifestyle that we've had over the last 30 years.
And how is your own Italian?
Yeah, it's okay. You know, I can speak. It's pretty social. So like when we go out to eat and when we're just kind of talking to people in the community here, I can usually converse and understand pretty well. But if you get it to anything too technical in any one direction or another, then you start to lose me.
So you've jetted back here shortly after the World Cup draw. That's probably the best starting point to talk about Canada, Qatar, Switzerland, and then a UEFA playoff winner that could be Italy, maybe one of the home nations as well. Yeah. What is your overall perspective of the draw?
Look, it's not the easiest. You're always hoping, you know, like I was giving a hard time to Pochettino and saying that they had such an easy draw. You know, but I think that it'll be a test, that each opponent presents different kinds of challenges. Obviously, if it winds up being Italy, I know that national team pretty well, and I know that league really well. So it'll be easy for me to help prepare for that. And it'll be really exciting to have that game in Toronto where there are a ton of Italian Canadians. But that makes the draw from something that's somewhat difficult to something that's very difficult. So, you know, in one way, I'd love to play Italy, and I'd love to be challenged that way. And another way, I don't want to play them.
Is it strange in some ways, though, not knowing that final opponent in the group and having to wait until March?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, it was a good way with the schedule to give more teams an opportunity to qualify in a way that it was fair and competitive. But it's less than ideal, you know, to not know one of your three opponents until 2 months before the tournament starts. But like what I kind of said is, who cares? Like, it's the World Cup. Like, we'll do whatever it takes to make sure we're ready to go, and we'll be excited for whoever we have to play out of that group.
Switzerland were the pot 2 team, and it seems to me, looking at how you play, that's a good matchup because they like the ball, you were very aggressive without it. Do you think your team are well suited to come up against the Swiss?
Look, I think that with the way we play and the way we like to be the aggressor, both with and against the ball, like, we don't fear any opponents, and there's obviously some where people say, oh, that's a good possession team and that could be a good matchup for you. But there's part of that that's true, but it also can work conversely, where if we're not really good on the day and they're very good on the day, then they can punish us. So we will certainly need to study them well, to study what they do best, and make sure that we mitigate and limit it so that we can play more into our strengths. But I really respect their coach, Murat Yakin. I think he's been an incredible coach over the last 30 years. And he's done a great job with their national team. And I think their national team is really balanced and has a lot of talent all over the pitch.
And obviously Qatar have got a globally renowned manager as well in Julian Lopetegui. And I understand you wasted no time scouting one of your group opponents after the World Cup draw.
Yeah, I was there last night. So they lost 3-0. It wasn't a great game against Tunisia, but they didn't play all their starters. They kind of rotated a few players. So, look, Qatar, I think, now has some experience of playing in the World Cup. It's a little bit like Canada, right, where now it's an emerging football nation with a really good coach, and they have some very talented players, and we'll have to make sure that we are the aggressor in that game. We make it difficult on them, and that we set the tone of what we want that game to look like.
As far as the final opponent is concerned, on the one hand, you can wait until the playoff semi and final, and in the semis you get to see 2 for 1, and the same for the final. But is it challenging having to basically scout 4 different countries between now and March until you know who you're going to play?
Well, I know enough about all 4 teams already. We're going to wait to do the full scout. I mean, we're doing a statistical analysis and doing a little bit of an overview of each team so that as we're watching them in the playoffs, we really know what we're looking for. But we're going to do an intensive review and preparation for both Switzerland and Qatar, and almost be able to kind of put that aside so that we can dedicate, a good month and a half to whoever comes out of that group. And then, we'll be able to look at the last friendlies in June and be prepared for the first match, and then watch their I think I will also be flying the day after our first match in Toronto to, I believe the match is in San Francisco. It's either San Francisco or Seattle. So I'll go to the match out there to see that one live, and then we'll have 5 days preparation to get ready for the second match against Qatar.
It is going to be a different World Cup. It's expanded. There's 4 seeded teams. It sits in many ways from what we've seen based on the draw, and the intersect between sport, entertainment, and even politics as well. Yeah. What do you make of the new expanded format?
I like it. I think it's good to have more nations involved, right? And it makes it a little bit more interesting in the group phase, and I think it sets up for a few more upsets, which I think is always interesting when you're talking about World Cups. So, it's the one thing that I think is a little bit less fair is that there aren't as many matches to qualify because of Nations League and everything else. And I don't know if they'll plan on adjusting that for the next round of qualification. But some teams only had 3 or 4 matches to try to make it to the World Cup, which is a little bit awkward, I think. I think you need a good run of games to see who has earned the right to get to the World Cup.
And this, in some ways, feels like the World Cup of Donald Trump. Is there a danger that Canada and Mexico get a bit overshadowed in all of this?
Well, look, I from the beginning as an American, I kind of thought that this was a political decision by the U.S. to involve Canada and Mexico so that they could ensure getting the bid. However, I think that given where we're at now with the sport in the 2 different countries, I mean, Mexico and U.S., the sport's now very established. But for Canada, I think this is a big moment in our history. So whether it is more centric around the United States, which I believe is the case, it's still an incredible opportunity for a nation like Canada and where we are in the overall development of the sport in the country. It's an incredible moment for us in our sporting history and our football history. And I don't think it could come at a better time because, there's not just MLS, but there's the Canadian Premier League, the CPL, and then that's also coincided with probably the best that this team's ever been, the Canadian national team. We're our highest ranking we've ever had. I think we have more players playing at big clubs in Europe. So clearly the sport is establishing itself more and more. And what a better time to host a World Cup than right now.
Yeah, and as a multiple MLS Cup winner during your playing days and looking for the benefit of MLS, the Canadian teams, going into the World Cup, you must have been very encouraged to see Vancouver, even though they couldn't quite win it, make that MLS Cup final.
Yeah, well, first I think Greg Kerfoot's always been a close friend of the Canadian Soccer Association, and he's the owner of Vancouver, and so, you know, he and I have been close for years. I interviewed for that job years ago, didn't get it. I remind Greg of that sometimes. But that's where we first kind of hit it off, he and I, was in that interview process. Then I've gotten to know Axel Schuster really well. I've gotten to know Jesper Sorensen really well. And then obviously the player pool. There's a lot of players there that I'm familiar with and a lot that have been in and around our Canadian national team. So I think that club is right now doing a lot of things right. And it's funny because there's a lot of talk about the stadium and are they going to be sold and what's going to happen. But I'm very hopeful that Greg and the ownership team there and the city of Vancouver will find a way to keep that team in that city. And that's important for Canada, it's important for Vancouver, and I think it's important for the Whitecaps organization as well.
Let's take you all the way back then to when you first got this job. How did it come about?
Well, I had a few initial discussions in maybe 6 months prior to when I first met Kevin Blue. But I didn't really think of it that seriously. Some people that I knew inside the Canadian Soccer Association. But then when Kevin Blue got the job, I'd heard he wanted to speak to me, and I heard that he was good. And so, I was here in Italy, and we did a Zoom call with him. Maybe Toe St. Ricketts was on the call, a few others.
Jess!
Hey, Kevin, how we doing, man?
We are doing awesome. We are pumped. Canada is right here watching you.
Nice.
And we are ready to get after it, man.
I appreciate so much your trust and your belief in me.
And right away, I could see that Kevin was different. You know, he had a little bit more of a business acumen, like an idea of how to build something, and how to, raise the funds to get that done, how to hire the right kind of people. And so right away I was like, okay, this is now more in line with the way I think. Then I started analyzing the player pool more and more, which I already knew a bit of, but getting to know more. And I started to think like maybe this was the project that I've been looking for, which by the way, when I left Leeds, if you would have said, oh, you're going to be the Canadian national team coach in a year and a half, I'd have said, no way. But it checked all the boxes. It checked all the boxes for me, from good leadership to people who valued relationships to a player pool that was easy to have relationships with and manage, but also could physically play the game the way that I wanted. And then, the other X factor in it all was like representing a country, and I've always liked Canadians. I've always had friends that are Canadians. I'm from Wisconsin. It's not too far. And, there's something about Canadians and their mindset and their kindness and their friendliness that resonated with who I am. So when I put it all together, I'm like, this seems like the perfect fit. And it's really turned out to be that way.
But international management after you left Leeds was not necessarily at the forefront of your mind.
No, but I had been thinking about it. I'd thought about the U.S. national team. I'd spoken to a number of national teams. I had actually met with Gareth Southgate, Ralph Rangnick, Hansi Flick, who Hansi was coaching Germany at the time, and talked to them about the differences and what do they try to achieve and what are the challenges and what are the benefits. And they each it was interesting. They each kind of had a little bit of a different perspective, and part of it was cultural, right? Like where they're from, what kind of team they were coaching. And I took a little something from each one of them, and they were all very, very helpful, and I was thankful to do that. But, it made me think more carefully about what that would look like. And, it is different. It's not just different from a technical aspect of like how to coach the team. It's also different when you represent a country, like everything from how you speak about football, how you speak about your team, how you represent the team, the country. Like, there's a lot more responsibility to what it means to be from that nation than it is just to be a football coach for a club. And I've enjoyed that, you know, and like I said already, like I enjoy the Canadian mentality. It fits well with me, and I enjoy representing all the goodness that I think Canadians have in them.
As an American, how from day one do you make sure that you embed yourself in Canadian culture?
Well, there was some negative reaction to me, to an American being the coach, which I understand. Like, it's interesting because, I mean, I spoke at length to a Chinese club, a Saudi club, like, and it was interesting. I mean, look, we could go to what it's like being an American in England, but it's amazing to see how many people have trepidation in hiring American and what that means for their culture and where they're at. So it's not just England. There's I think some ill feelings about Americans in a lot of different parts of the world, and it's okay. Like, it's more important to hear those things up front or understand them before I actually go into the job than a month in or 6 months in. And I'm okay with it. Like, I don't, like, people cannot like Americans or not like me. I don't care. Like, that's fine. Everybody's welcome to their own opinion. But it's important for me when I'm evaluating things to understand exactly what people are looking for, what they believe in, and make sure that it has a lot of symmetry with who I am.
And from a coaching perspective, what are the differences you have to make going from club management, where the players can learn your system every day, to international management, where you've not only got less time with your squad, but they could be playing several different systems and styles with their club managers?
No, it's definitely true that it's not as easy to implement a system in international football, but it's the same for the opponents. Right? So the overall tactical sophistication of what goes on inside an international football match isn't at the level of what it's like at a club. So what have we done? We've focused a lot more on principles than even tactics, and we've focused a lot more on individual behaviors, and then how that fits into the whole collective scheme of what we do. And then it's just about some little tactical tweaks of what we need to do in order to access the abilities of our players. And I think doing that and the precision of being able to do that, and that's, I think, in the end, as a coach, that's what is most important, is not that you have a style of play or not that you have a methodology, but the precision at which you can teach that. And that's what international football tests. It tests your overall ability to communicate and implement how precise you want your team to be. And look, we're lucky at Canada because we have a lot of players that fit the way that I like to play. We have a lot of players that are eager, really eager to help the national team continue to establish itself and to establish themselves within the national team. And part of the reason for all that is because with the home World Cup right around the corner, everyone knows how important this moment in time is. And so I get the best versions of our players almost every single time.
So with that in mind, how close are you to knowing the squad that will ultimately be part of the 2026 World Cup?
Yeah, I would say we are pretty close. The biggest issue, and we've realized this over the last 6 months, are the injury factors, you know? And so I've made a concerted effort to try to broaden this player pool. And with the idea that World Cup games come at you fast, that they're very physical and very fast. And so you need to use different players at different times. And that there can always be things that happen, you know, in March, April, May that can prevent some of your best players from being involved. And if you haven't done enough work ahead of time, really incorporating as many players as possible, then you may find yourself missing 2 key players in the tournament and having to create a Band-Aid situation or throw somebody into a situation that they're not ready for. So we have, I think, really engaged a wide player pool, and it's benefited each of the players and it's benefited the team in a big way.
And you mentioned that unpredictable aspects such as injuries can change your selection. One of them that thankfully has worked out well for you is Alphonso Davies and his ACL. He's going to be back and hopefully fit in time for the World Cup. Are you confident that come summer he'll have had enough game time to be at peak level?
Yeah, Alfonso's back on the pitch already, training with the team. I'm confident in Alphonso. They've done a really good job. He's hit all of his benchmarks, and he's an incredible athlete, like ridiculous specimen. So if there's anybody who can come back stronger than ever, it's him. Then we have Moise Bombito, who'll be coming back from a broken tibia. We have Alistair Johnson and Derek Cornelius, who will both have hamstring surgeries that'll be coming back. So we have a number of important injuries that we will need to help nurse through the next 6 months to make sure that they can be as close to 100% as possible come the World Cup.
Tell me a little bit about how Alfonso's role differs for country compared to club.
Well, he's a huge part of everything that we do with the national team. He can be in all these different areas, but we've tried to really support him with a really good leadership group. Guys who have been around for a bit and really respect Alphonso, but also can help guide him through this and help support him through this. And I think the way that has all functioned has been really good. And the only sad part is that Alphonso's missed out on a lot of things that we've been continuing to establish over the last 6 to 9 months, but he'll integrate himself back quickly into the team. And then, at Bayern, I think his role has grown a lot, but clearly he started as the young fast kid who could play on the left and who could be a lockdown defender and could also get up and down the wing. And so, I know what it's like in Germany, like especially a club like Bayern, it's very German-centric, right? And they have incredible leaders over the years at that club, but I think that's also been an opportunity for Alphonso to learn really real leadership and to be around high-level players, high-level people, and add that to who he is. So, it'll take a little bit of time to get him up to speed on everything that we've been doing, but I've been communicating with him a lot over the last months, and I know he'll be ready to go next summer.
If we go further back the field to the goalkeeper situation, you've got a whole lot of depth in that position and you've intentionally rotated so you can presumably get a close look at more than one name. Do you know your number one yet?
No, I don't. I think, Dane St. Clair and Max Crepeau right now are the clear 1 and 2 or 1A, 1B, whatever you want to say. And that's going to be maybe one of my most important decisions and one of my toughest decisions. And in some ways, I can't make a wrong decision because I know they're both capable. And when I make the decision, honestly, I'll only be thinking about whoever didn't get the decision. That's kind of the way that I am as a coach. I obviously I'm always trying to do and make decisions that I think are best for the team, but I always feel the worst for those that have invested so much and then don't get quite as much out of it. But, again, we need to be at least 2 deep in every position. And at goalkeeper, I can say for sure that 100% I trust and rely on both of those guys. And whatever decision I make will be a good one.
I suppose it's a situation you haven't really been in because as a club manager, you have to disappoint players, but there's always the ability in the next game or across the season to give everybody minutes. Whereas with a World Cup, it may be you're my number one, you're not, or it may be you're on the plane and you're not. Have you thought about how you're going to break good and bad news to your players?
Look, the way I deal with it is I just try to be as straight as I possibly can. I was a part of the 2010 World Cup, and we started a camp with 30 players, and then a week in, we trimmed it down to 23, and we had to tell 7 players, bring them down from their rooms at 2 in the morning, 7 players, and tell them that they weren't going to the World Cup, like crushing their dreams. So, there's never a good way to do it. I just think to be most honest and straightforward and try to be as respectful to them as possible. But again, that was probably my worst day in coaching, was that day. And in general, that's the wins and losses are always things you carry with them, but the relationships are for me the most important, and that's what I'll always remember about teams I played on, teams I coached, were the relationships that I had with the people that were inside.
Yeah, we'll talk about 2010 in a bit more detail. That was Bob Bradley, of course. But if we go from goalkeeper to centre forward, Jonathan David, any cause for concern because he hasn't quite got going with his goal scoring yet at Juventus?
For me, I'm not, of all the players that are in our squad, and I'm not worried about many of them, but Jonathan David would be last on the list. He is very cool, very smart, doesn't get stressed out, has an incredible ability to stay on task and focus on the things that are most important. And obviously, I think it's important that he plays and that he's in the rhythm of scoring goals and that he has confidence. But that's kind of who Jonathan is anyway. So I think by the end of the year, first of all, at Juventus, and by the way, here in Italy, they're on TV every week. I see him play just about every week. But I am fully confident that by the end of the year that Jonathan will be playing every match and be scoring lots of goals.
David to make it 2! Lightning fast counter-attack, and this is the Jonathan David we admired at Lille.
Because he's here in Italy, do you get the opportunity to speak to him perhaps more often than some other players?
Yeah, I mean, look, Johnny's not like, he doesn't need a ton of conversations. We check in with each other a little bit here and there, and I'm just supporting him when he's playing well and trying to continue to encourage him if he's not playing as much. But he's, again, not one of the guys that I need to like be babysitting, that's for sure. But look, Johnny's a big personality in terms of like just the magnetism behind who he is. Like anyone that spends time with him sees kind of how funny he is, how smart he is, how personable he is, and all of that tends toward the feeling that like this guy's got everything under control.
And you've got Promise as well. Excuse the pun, but how much promise does Promise have?
Toby is what we call him. He kind of goes by Toby, but like publicly his name is Promise. But Toby, we all know, has massive potential. And, you know, we've been continuing to challenge him to up his fitness, to up his reactions, to see the game the way we see it more and more. But he's all in on all of this. He knows he needs to improve. He knows that he has a bigger upside, and he's always challenging himself to do more, to think more, to put more into it. And in the meantime, he scores goals. So that's the gold standard of being a striker, and he has that. So I think he will always have a role for us. Maybe sometimes it'll be off the bench. But if he can continue to adapt and get fitter within the way we play, there's no reason why he can't be also starting World Cup matches. So we're pushing him, we're investing in him, and we like him.
So he could be one of the breakout stars. I think another worth talking about is Kone as well. How much potential has he got? Not just within your side. I feel like at this World Cup, he might announce himself to the world stage.
Yeah, I think Ismail, again, playing here in Italy, I get to see him every week pretty closely. I think he's having an incredible season at Sassuolo, and the way they use him, the way he's playing, the confidence he has, and the most importantly, the tactical concentration and discipline, I think has grown this year. And so if he can continue to become a responsible midfielder along with all the other qualities he has, and I'm continuing to try to encourage him to be dynamic and to be sprinting more and to physically be more present in the game. But he's got all the tools. I really like him. We have a really good relationship. And I think that he knows that we're helping push him to the next level. And you're right. I think this summer could be really big for him.
There's a few players on the periphery of your squad that I think are very Jesse Marsch kind of players. One of them, for example, is Jayden Nelson. He might get the call, he might not. A player like that's got a fascinating backstory as well because he beat cancer as a kid. Does that just speak to the kind of depth, and is that why there will be a few late selection headaches?
Yeah, I mean, Jayden, I think you're right, has a lot of, he's fast, he's also not just fast, he's mobile, he's quick. He's also very agile. So like as a pressing player, as a tight space player, as a dynamic player, he has all these qualities. And then for him, it's just, he's another young player. Like what you have a lot in Canada is players that maybe mature a little bit later, maybe because the sport doesn't have the level at the youth that some of the other countries have, and then some maybe that they're not pushed or challenged enough at younger ages. And that's why we're trying to change some of that with the youth national team development and having more teams and having more tournaments. But a lot of them are a little bit late bloomers. And Jaden, you could put a little bit in that category as well. But I think he's had a really good season with Vancouver. I think he continues to challenge himself to grow within the way that I think about football and the way that we think about it in Canada. And you're right, I think he could be a big benefit for us. And he's another guy that if you just talk about, all right, what would it be like to throw him on for 20, 30 minutes at the end of every match and think about the defender that has to deal with him, that's not an easy task. So he's been really engaged in a lot of ways, and I think challenging himself to continue to develop, and he could be a strong factor for us as well.
So with so much talent and depth, what are your expectations from the 2026 World Cup?
We want to win the group. You know, I mean, for a country that's never won a game or never won a point, that is a crazy statement. But I think internally our expectations are that at home that we can be the aggressor against whoever we play against, and that we can win the group. And that's before the group was drawn, and that's after the group was drawn. That's no disrespect to any of our opponents. In fact, Switzerland and Qatar, and if it's Italy, Wales, Bosnia, or Northern Ireland, we will respect all of them as well. But we are going to go into games and we are going to put the game on our terms. And at home, in the home World Cup, we are going to make sure that we are the aggressor. And if we can do that effectively, we think we can win the group.
Have you thought about what might be possible if you do win the group beyond that? How far could Canada go?
Look, I mean, it's step by step, but obviously one of the motivations for winning the group is you stay in Canada. If you take second or third, then you have to go to the U.S. So we're very focused on it'll be match by match and moment by moment, but we are very focused on wanting to make sure that from the start, whoever we play in the first game, that we go after it, that we're confident, that we believe in ourselves, that we're clear in who we are, we're clear in how we want to play, and that we give ourselves the best chance to win every match.
And we spoke a little bit about how it's slightly tough to prepare because you don't know who that final opponent is. They're also your opening fixture as well, so that's another added complication.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's also difficult for that opponent to prepare for, the three opponents that they'll have as well. So you can look at it both ways. Obviously, whether it's Italy or Wales or whoever, we'll be prepared. Like I know that our staff will do enough. We'll be able to analyze it just like we have all the opponents we've played. We've had very good first halves since I've been the coach, and a lot of the reason behind that, I think, is we've had good match plans, and we've created clarity for the players from the start to go out and have a good performance and get leads. And we're going to try to do the exact same thing again, especially at home.
You sort of alluded to it before. If it is to be Italy in that opening game, it might not feel like much of a home game.
Yeah, which will be crazy, right? So I always joke, even when I was the coach at Montreal, I was learning French, right? But I had an Italian, French, Canadian owner, an Italian, French, Canadian sport director, an Italian, French, Canadian assistant coach. We had like 6 Italians on the team. And my staff would go, "Why are you learning French? You should be learning Italian." Football in Canada and Toronto in itself has been very impacted by Italian immigration. I think that's a great thing. I've met a lot of incredible Canadians and Italians. I think it's been a benefit for the national team and benefit for the sport in general in the country. But we want to make sure that on June 12th, that BMO Stadium is full of Canadians. Canadians, right? So I've already issued the challenge out to all the Canadian Italians. Some people have already told me "fa fanculo" or whatever to get out of here, but I think that's a minimum requirement for now having a home World Cup, is making sure that stadium is full of Canadians.
So in terms of your schedule between now and that opening game, what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, look, we touched on it, I went to Qatar. We're already starting the evaluation of our opponents. I went through this in 2010 with Bob Bradley for the World Cup when I was on his staff. I felt like by the time the World Cup came around that I knew England, Slovenia, and Algeria like the back of my hand. Like literally, like I could predict who they were going to start against us and why, and what those players, their qualities had as individuals, and what they would look like in the games, and then what the team would look like collectively. And the key in that process of all the work that we will do by going to see them live in stadium, by looking at the video, by analyzing the data, by talking to people that know these players and know these teams or have worked with them in the past. We do all this background information. But the key to all of it is just to create a clear picture for our team as to what to expect and then what we want the game to look like. How to shift the game to make sure that we are taking away the things that each individual is good at and the opponent is good at in general, and then shifting it towards what we want the game to be and what we think we're good at. And the more that we can do that, then I think the better chance we have to win the game.
So you mentioned 2010, working at the World Cup under Bob Bradley. US, of course, got out of their group and into the knockout stage. What were some of your
We won
learnings?
the group.
You won
Ben.
it.
We
indeed.
won with England in the group.
I purposely just said get out because I didn't want to bring it up.
Well,
but
look,
yes, you were better than England.
Even in that, like, you know, everybody talks about, you know, was an easy group, a hard group, okay, getting out of the group, or in that group phase, we were 3 minutes from being out of the tournament, and then we wound up being 3 minutes from winning the group. And then the job that we will try to do again as a staff is just to give our players the best chance to be prepared, but to be free, to go after the games, to not think about the pressure, to rely on the trust that they have for who they are and the trust they have in who the team is and what their teammates are and what the staff is, so that the players are free to go out and play and not to feel the pressure, not to overthink, not to be worried about mistakes. Like, almost the entire way that I like to play football is not focusing on mistakes and focusing on how to just feed into the kind of team and mentality that we want to create. So, you know, that'll never, ever, maybe in my entire life, be more important than coaching a team in the home World Cup. So I want to make sure that that's what we identify with.
In a different world, if things had aligned, could we be sitting here, me speaking to you as the US men's national team manager?
Well, no, because they wanted me to live in the US, so I wouldn't be here in Italy. And you know what? Quite honestly, my wife always says you can't connect the dots going forward. You can only connect them going back. Like, I was devastated when they pulled the rug out from under me with the U.S. national team. But when I look back at it, it was the best thing that could have happened, because landing here in Canada, I just feel like I found a team and a fan base and a country that fits who I am more, that fits with the things I believe in more, that also is willing to think about how to work together in the football, soccer community to continue to build the sport in a way that is beneficial for everybody. So, you know, and that's nothing to take away from the U.S. It's just so big, and there's so many spheres of influence, and there's so many egos and people that want to say and have opinions. And Canada, it's just calmer. You know, there's less people, there's less spheres of influence, there's more of a desire for everybody to work together, there's more of an understanding that this moment in time is important for everyone in the country, in the sport. So I think, and that's kind of who I am. You know, I don't need to walk around and feel like I'm the big boss. I want to work in a community, I want to work in a company, I want to be an employee as much as I want to be a leader. And I think that in all ways, the CSA, the nation, the player pool, you know, the need for continued development of the sport in the country, it all fits who I am and where I am in my life.
You say the rug was pulled from under you. Can you share any more information as to exactly what happened?
No, I mean, look, all I'd say is it was made very clear to me that I was going to be the coach, and then, you know, and then it was made very clear to me that I was not. But again, I like, at the time I was devastated and angry, somewhat angry, but now I'm thankful and really happy to be where I'm at.
Have you got any sense, though, as to why there was a U-turn?
Yes and no, but it really doesn't matter. You know, I mean, and I like Mauricio too. So, you know, and I want the U.S. to do well. I want the sport in the country to be successful and continue to grow. I want the players that I've coached and that I know I want that team to be successful, just not when they play us. That's my only thing, is when we play us, I want them to lose.
And is it true that when they first alerted you to the possibility of becoming US men's national team manager, you had other opportunities that you put on hold to prioritise that job?
Yeah, I mean, the main one was Leicester, right? Like, I mean, I was literally being fingerprinted for the job at Leicester, and I was ready to take it. And then I got a call from U.S. Soccer, so it changed the trajectory of my life. But again, I think things happen for a reason, and I'm happy where I am right now.
So you basically accepted the Leicester job, and you were going through the formal process of getting a visa to work there, and you're actually at Leicester when the USA called you.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
So you put that on hold.
And there was a match that day. We were going to go to the stadium together, and we were ready to. Everything was agreed upon. And by the way, the Leicester people are fantastic people. I felt terrible because it was the second time that I had done that, pulled the rug out from a club, because it happened with Southampton as well. But I mean, I like that club. I like those people. It would have been, in another lifetime, that would have been a really cool experience. But the way it worked out, I'm happy to be where I'm at.
How do you think the US will fare at this World Cup?
Look, I think the US has a really good team. I think they've gotten a very favorable draw. So I would expect them to do well. I think there'll be great support behind the team for the World Cup. And they have a really good team. They have a really good team. So they're going to do great.
If we come back to you and think about after the World Cup, because your contract expires following this tournament, have you got an appetite to discuss an extension?
Yeah. So Kevin Blue and I have had multiple discussions going back all the way to February of 2025 this year about the idea of making this longer. And I think I like working with him, and I like working with this team, and I like working for this country. He is the same, and I think, the partnership that we have has made the experience, has enhanced the experience, right? I think his expertise meshes really well with my expertise, and I think we fill in the gaps of each other's strengths and weaknesses really well. And that's, whenever you have a boss, I think that's what you're really looking for. It's not just someone that you like to work for, but like when the partnership benefits both. And so I feel that way very much so with Kevin. And so let's see, the reason I was hesitant from the start was just because I wanted to get through the year. I wanted to make sure that it was a big year in the preparation phase. I wanted to make sure that the team continued to develop, and that the appreciation for what we were trying to do with the team continued to be positive. Or at least, that people were aware that even though we didn't win every game, that we were still moving the needle forward. And now we can say 8-10 months later that in general, not everyone likes me or loves me, but I think in general, people see what we're trying to achieve and how we're trying to prepare this team. And I think that they understand and can see what the vision is, and that people can attach themselves to what that might mean for the future.
And does being an international manager also give you a work-life balance that you maybe hadn't considered as a club manager? I know Jurgen Klopp, Gareth Southgate, these kind of names, once they're out of that day-to-day club management, they realise that they prefer it because they can spend more time with their family.
Yeah, the truth is that it's not nearly as, international football is not as demanding as club football. But it's different. That's the thing, is you have to, you move your energies more toward what's the foundation of the sport in the country. How do you enhance the overall experience for everyone from grassroots and from 5- and 6-year-olds to the women's side, and how to mesh it with the men's side, to then what it means for the first team, the national team, and the highest levels of the sport, and how can you contribute to everything from the administration to the implementation of development strategies, and so you can, in coaching educations, you can be involved in so much more than just being judged for wins and losses. And so for me, even more than the stress and and work level that it takes to be a club manager, it's that I feel that I'm able to contribute to so much more than just what wins and losses are of one team. And so that's the area that I would probably say I find the most rewarding about being an international manager.
You're obviously focused on the World Cup, but in the long term, does a part of you feel you've maybe got unfinished business in the Premier League?
If I went back to the Premier League, it would have to be the right situation. It would have to be the right person or people, like, whether it's a chairman or a sport director or a CEO, it would have to be the right, core of leadership within the club to work with. And again, somebody with the competencies of someone like Kevin Blue, because the flat truth is there's not a lot of people in sports business that have those kinds of competencies, even at the Premier League level. That's the truth. And then it would have to be a club that has a similar football vision to what I have, which, different places have different things, and everybody can have their own identity. So, that's the key, is that it's not just about, we need to get results right now, so we need to hire this manager. It's something about building something. It's something about making it a long-lasting impression on what the club is, and doing it in a way so that it's set up for long-term success, and not just with the vision for game to game or week to week or month to month or year to year, but like, what does the overall long-term vision look like?
Now you've had some time to think about it, what are your overall reflections from your time at Leeds?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was awesome challenge. Just to talk about the technical aspect of what the job was. The players, I couldn't have asked for more from them. They committed everything to me being their manager and to what I was trying to achieve with them. I'm really thankful to work with them. The club was very supportive of me. It's just that, I was used to being at the higher end of the spectrum in terms of spending and talent and everything else. And the prospect of what that means competing in a league is a little bit different. But in those other places too, you still had Champions League and you still had cups and you still had lots of different variables as to what was the games look like and what success looked like. But when you're talking about the Premier League in a club like Leeds, you're talking about playing against the best clubs and the best coaches and the best players in the world. And what does that mean to how it tests you to be the best at what you do? And so I learned a lot. I think I failed a lot, but I succeeded a lot. And I learned and I added it to who I am. And I think it made me a better person and a better coach. So I'm thankful for that.
Must have been pretty incredible to be a part of that survival day win over Brentford.
One of our manager.
I would say that whole 12 weeks in general. Obviously, the last week was a big part of it, because the fact that we were successful capped that 12-week period the right way. But when I took over that team, they were beaten down. Beaten down by results, physically beaten down. This was a psychological project as much as a football one, and we had to build them back up physically, mentally, psychologically, in all ways to believe that they could survive. We had to create calmness and ease to the way that we worked every day, and clarity as to how we were going to get there. And again, there was lots of ups and downs. There were times in there where we were sure that
second season was always going to be tough because you lost Calvin Phillips and Rafinha during the summer.
Yeah. Look, that year we were one of two teams to have a positive spend, right? Or actually make money on transfers. And so, of course, I liked the team that we had going in. And I think that, we played much better than what our results were. We were often in control of matches. We were often the better team and would walk away with nothing. And a lot of times lose both boxes. And that's a lot of times what the Premier League can look like. Like the best players are they're the statistic busters. They're the outliers, and that's whether it's a goalkeeper or best defenders or obviously then best attackers, those are the wild cards when you're preparing for matches like that. But again, it was awesome. It was awesome. And it was, every week was like, the margin of error was so thin. We never got killed, right? We were in every match. We held our own. We performed. The guys gave everything. I enjoyed the experience, and like, yeah, I was disappointed to be let go, and I still believe that if they kept me there, that we would have stayed in the league. But you know, that's for the history books, and I just took that experience with me, and I moved on, and I'm ready for all my next challenges.
Was there a prejudice against you as specifically a US manager, and if so, how did you deal with that?
I think there was, but in the end, I didn't let it deter me. You know, it almost motivated me even more. And that's kind of how I am. Like I deal better with criticism than I do with praise. But there were some things happening on the inside. I'm not going to go into it, but there were definitely things that I experienced that I couldn't believe. And like, look, don't get me wrong. I'm an American white male. Like, there's a lot more problems happening in the world than what happened to me in the Premier League, and prejudices and things that are unfair. But it was just interesting for me. It was a little strange because I hadn't experienced it. You know, I think we're privileged. I've lived a privileged life, you know, and so it was surprising some of the experiences I had. But again, like, overall, I was proud to be there, proud to represent Leeds United, and very thankful for the support that I got from inside the club at every angle.
Do things like Ted Lasso help?
Yeah, I mean, look, Ted Lasso, it probably doesn't help, right? But in the end, again, who cares? Like, you know, all of us, we have our own set of challenges to deal with in life, and you just take them head on. And that's the way I deal with things. Like, I talked about Ted Lasso right away to kind of get it out of the way. I talked about all the different, being an American, but it was funny because, Ted Lasso was out when I was in Germany, but nobody called me Ted Lasso there. Nobody talked about my accent. Nobody talked about me being American. Like, I spoke German. I coached the team in Austria. That was the same. So different places, it's different things, but whatever. You deal with the set of challenges. You try to always play toward your strengths, and then you try to help your team be successful.
Can Leeds stay up this season?
It'll be a challenge. Leeds is a big club. It's a very emotional club. I think when you're the manager there, one of the keys is just trying to maintain calm and patience. And I think Daniel Farke's done a pretty good job of that. I still know the 49ers, and I know they're trying to create stability at the club, and they have a long-term vision. I think, look, this is the problem in sports. It's not just Premier League. It's not just football. The best organizations that have a long-term vision and stick to it are the ones that are successful. The ones that are knee-jerk and think that they always have a better idea and a better solution and a better person and a better leader, they're the ones that get caught in cycles of danger, right? And so I believe that the 49ers are the type of people that understand how, in sport business, how to create longevity and how to have a plan and stick to it.
Finishing up as we bring it back to you and the World Cup, let's talk about your influences, because we haven't touched upon that. Who are the coaches that inspired you on your journey to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, look, my first, I had some good coaches when I was young, right? But the first time that I met Bob Bradley, he recruited me to go to Princeton, and as soon as I stepped foot on the campus, as impressed as I was by the campus, which at Princeton, it may be the nicest university campus in the world, and maybe in the States or in the world, I was even more impressed by Bob, by his intelligence, by his idea of football, by his idea of driving competitiveness. Like, I knew he was different, and I wanted to get into the school just so I could play for Bob Bradley, which is a statement given what Princeton is. And so, then going with him to MLS and being around him with the national team and seeing everything that he established, I learned a lot from him. Work ethic, professionalism, communication, standards of training, standards of play, standards of everything. He was my first major influence in my life in terms of what the professionalism of football is. And then the second one is Ralph Rangnick. You know, when I met Ralph, he introduced a whole new intricacy of detail football to me. Like, not just the style, but like the detail that he went into of how to talk about football, how to train it, what a methodology is, how everything that you do fits together, and then how that fits into a tactical system, and all of those things resonated with me because of my personality. Like, he taught me the details of how to play aggressive football, and I'm so thankful for him for that. So I think I've combined kind of the two of them, who, by the way, their personalities are not that dissimilar, but then used my personality as, you know, the authentic person that I am to insert myself into the kind of type of professionalism and detail of football that they taught me.
We hear a lot of words associated with the Red Bull style, such as front foot aggression, pressing, and so on. But how has your own brand of that evolved?
Yeah, I mean, I like that you say that, because I think obviously I think Red Bull football in itself is a brand, but Ralph was never a guy to say you have to play this way. He'd say, these are the principles that we think are important. This is how we teach them. This is how we would encourage you to think about it, and then you have to make it your own. And so, I think Ralph Hasenhüttl is different than I am, is different than Oliver Glasner, that is different than Ralf Rangnick, that is different than Julian Nagelsmann, that is different than Marco Rose, right? And so I would still describe it as three things. One, aggression, right? And always looking to control the match through aggression, collective aggression. Two would be controlling spaces, right? Like that, so that whatever you do, you're more prepared than the opponent is to win the ball back, or to maintain possession, or to press the opponent and win the ball. So those things, that everything's connected, and that the tactical system means that at any moment, you're always, by your positioning and by the philosophy of how we play, you're doing at least two things at once, and you're ready for whatever happens next. So that, I think, helps players develop. It helps them think faster. It helps them think more intelligently, and then it helps insert them themselves into the game more. So yeah, and I mean, look, I've played 4-2-2-2. I've played 3-5-2. I've played 4-2-3-1. I've played 4-3-3. Do you know what I mean? So, like, for me, the actual formations and system, if you want to call it, aren't as important as the principles inside of that. And so that's really what we try to focus on with everything we do.
Away from the philosophy, are there parts of the game you're now putting more onus on? Because if we look at the Premier League, corners and Arsenal, long throw-ins and Sunderland, Are you changing what you put emphasis on day by day in training as the game shifts?
Well, I've always been a set-piece guy. I've always liked set pieces, but now I have a set-piece coach, because I think that that's where the game has evolved to. I think that the level of detail that I was putting into set pieces pales in comparison to now when you have a set piece coach that really just focuses on that every day. So that it's almost like now a goalkeeper coach and a set piece coach, and how specific they are and detailed they are in each area winds up helping a team being able to execute. And you're right, it could be middle third throw-ins, it could be defensive throw-ins, it could be attacking third throw-ins, it could be free kicks from your own defensive half, free kicks from the side by the corner. Like the amount of detail now that goes into all the different ideas behind restarts, right, is evolving. And this, why I even got into set pieces in the first place is because one of my best friends is a basketball coach. And he would always say to me, why don't you do back picks? Why don't you do this? Why doesn't the taker take 100 a day? Or because of free throws, they sit and some things I said, look, if your free kick taker is going to take 100 days, his leg's going to fall off. So it's not all perfectly applicable, but the kinds of questions and the kinds of strategies that they have in basketball are very directly applicable to exactly what we're doing on set pieces in football. So that part has been fun. And then, I think he's learned from us a little bit of the physical training, a little bit of the GPS kind of stuff. And and the high performance training and gym work and all that, I think that football has always been at the forefront of those kinds of things.
Yeah, you're equally as big, aren't you, on psychology and sports science?
Yeah, I mean, look, these are things I enjoy, so you have to be, as a football manager, you have to be proficient, I think, at everything, right? You have to be able to understand or be good at and wear a lot of hats, whether it's talking to your chairman, whether it's talking to your fans, whether it's working with your physios in sports science, whether it's working with your goalkeeper coach or working with your academy, or all these things. You've got to be able to now understand how all the pieces fit into one big puzzle. But there's certain things that I think we just as people enjoy a little bit more. And for me, the number one would be relationships. Like, this is what I'm just a gregarious person, and I enjoy, whether it's having you here in Italy and sharing this experience, or whether it's going to an academy and meeting 5- and 6-year-old kids and their parents, or whether it's the fans at the World Cup. Like, I just enjoy being around people and sharing the overall experience of what we do for a living, because it's unique, it's different. So I care about that. I invest in that, and that's the most fun for me. I say it a lot of times. Like, I tell players when they're not playing. I tell players what they need to do to get better. I try to be very honest and open with them, because it's a respectful thing. That's what I would want, and I just want to have strong relationships because I think it's more fun if it feels like they belong, right? Like, I just think that that's the better way to do it, and when you win, then you know that everybody's contributed.
And putting you on the spot, who is the best player that you have ever coached?
I mean, I say this: if you were to put my best 11 together, it would be a damn good team. But I would probably say Erling Haaland, although Rafinha was very good, Szoboszlai incredible, Christo Nkunku I think has still part of his story to write. He's an incredible player. Upamecano, Konaté, Gvardiol, incredible defenders. Alphonso Davies, Moise Bombito, Jonathan David, so...
It is a good 11.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm leaving people out. A goalkeeper's probably Gulashi. Back line, I said I would the back line would be really good. The attacking group would be really good. No, I've been lucky that way. I mean, I don't ever try to take credit for any of them. I'm thankful to have worked with them. I learned some. I hope they learned things from me. I know I contributed to some of their development. I learned a little something from each of them too, like what they value, what they're good at, what they try to stick to every day, what their mentality is, how they look at improvement, how they look at concentration and discipline. And, I always try to help in all those areas, but a lot of these players are built with real special qualities, not just talent. They're built with drive and dedication that makes them special.
What makes Erling tick?
Honestly, what makes Erling tick is not just scoring goals, but being a teammate. He loves, and you can see it, when he scores, he loves to be with his team. When he wins, he wants to, of course, score, but he wants to win with the team. It's not like he's trying to put himself on a pedestal and he only cares about scoring goals. He's obviously very good at that, but he loves being part of teams. He loves winning every game in training. He wants to make sure that his whole team is at its best all the time. Of course, it's even funny sometimes when you see him with Pep after the game. And look, I had some of these conversations with him too after the game. Like, maybe it can be can you do this a little bit more? Can you do that a little bit more? And then I was trying to, but I was also seeing this. And he's a smart guy, but he's always focused on trying to do whatever it takes to win. So, yeah, he's fun to work with.
Presumably, you're not at all surprised to see him become the fastest ever player in the Premier League to reach 100 goals.
Yeah, well, when he left Salzburg, I said that it would start a competition with Mbappe for the next 10 years about the Golden Ball, the
Ballon d'Or.
Yeah, Ballon d'Or, winning titles, winning Champions League, and at the time people were kind of mocking me for saying that, but I could tell I could tell at that time that he was destined to be great.
Let's bring it back to Canada. What is your proudest moment so far in this journey?
Well, I mean, it's easy to say the Copa America run, but we were just starting the foundation. I think it's been the broadening of the player pool and the development of each player within the player pool, and seeing them move on to bigger clubs and bigger situations for themselves personally, professionally, financially, for their families. Like, those are the things that I think when you're on the inside and you see the impact of them developing and how that's impacted them and their families. Though I'm proud to have played a role in those guys developing themselves, and then, you know, the what it's meant for the overall security of their lives and their families' lives, because a lot of them come from, you know, difficult backgrounds, you know, and Canada is still, it's a beautiful country, and a lot of it's welcomed a lot of immigrants, but a lot of these guys have come from tough upbringings, and to see them succeed for themselves and their families, I think, is really important.
And surely the win on US soil as well has to be up there.
And that's it! It's masterful from Marsch's men. A 2-1 win. Schaffelberg and David get the goals. A special moment for Jesse Marsch in Canada. It's been a long time coming. A rare win on American soil.
You probably don't look at it this way, but from the outside in, there's almost a revenge element because you were so close to getting that US men's national team job.
I actually don't like playing the U.S. because of that. I think it winds up being too much about me and the U.S. And sometimes even if I make comments about our team, it's people think I'm making it in spite of the U.S. But I'm over that, and I want the U.S. to be successful. I don't care. But I want, you know, I want to represent our team and our country in every way to be the best that we can be.
And have you thought about what it will feel like being in that dugout as the lead guy? You were there in 2010, I know, but home World Cup for Canada, walking to the dugout ahead of that opening fixture, whoever it may be against.
No, I'm super excited. And I just want to make sure that when the first whistle blows for all three of those games, that our players are just as prepared as they can possibly be at their best and perform at their best so they can make the country proud.
And do you almost have to remove the hype a little bit? Because when you're preparing for a World Cup, you want the privacy, the seclusion. Sometimes managers will say, treat every game like any other game, but there will be this enormous buzz in all three host nations. Can you embrace it, or do you have to some extent ignore it?
No. We've talked about the fact that it's a home World Cup and it's going to be impossible to ignore the attention. But the key for us will be to stay calm, you know, to just kind of, one of the keys is to get all the preparation out of the way in the beginning in terms of like getting the tickets and your family and the travel and all this kind of stuff, to like get that. So, you know, I've talked a lot with the staff about making sure that we do all the work ahead of time, that the players are clear with all of those variables, so that then when we're in camp, we can just try to have a normal existence, right? Where we just focus on what we need to focus on. We go day by day, moment by moment, video session, training session, you know, that the preparation is clear and that the players are ready to perform. If we do that, then I know that we're going to have good performances.
And personally, are you patient or impatient in the sense, do you relish the months ahead because there's more prep to be done, or do you almost feel ready right now?
Look, man, we're sitting here on the mountains top of in Italy. Patience is key. So I'm big on the preparation work and, you know, getting things done ahead of time, but over time in my life, I've become a much more patient person. I've become much more relaxed. You know, it's not our job as a manager to control every single thing that happens with our players all the time. Like, you know, it's about creating a team. It's about helping the team understand what the plan is and what their roles are, and then it's about executing, right? And if you empower people to be their best, then they're going to put all their energies into understanding how they fit into the group and then how to get the job done. And I believe that this has been a big part of our success already, and it will be a big part of our success next summer.
So a final message, why is this World Cup so important for you and for Canada?
Well, I think it's important for Canada because it's a real chance to put their stamp on football in the country and to change the perception a little bit of what the sport is in the country and what the sport means, where Canada's standing is internationally. But I mean, maybe even more is just to like provide these players with the platform and the opportunity to show how great they are, because I really believe in them. They're fantastic people. They're really talented. They care about all the right things. They care about the country. Like my main responsibility in all this is to give them the opportunity to be at their best, and we've seen a lot of that already, and I'm challenging them every day to make sure that the preparation that goes into that and the understanding of what it will take is really clear, and they love it, by the way. Like every time that I set higher standards for them, they're like, they eat it up. That's exactly what they want. So it's a special group, and we'll be excited. We'll be excited for June 12th, baby.
Jesse, fascinating chat. Thank you for being so generous with your time and for welcoming us to your beautiful home as well. And good luck in the summer with Canada.
Right on, Ben. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks so much.
Good job.
Really appreciate
Good job.
that. That was excellent. Fascinating
Good
stuff.
job, man. You remembered everything.